Hello, everybody, and welcome back to On the Diamond and Into the Deep. The date is October 31st, 2024. It is Halloween, and welcome to episode 46. We are almost to 50, and we are now in the offseason. The Dodgers defeated the Yankees in the 5th game of the World Series last night, and now it is offseason time. So, today, what are we talking about? We are talking about the offseason. We're talking about 2024. We're giving you a little bit of a recap. And then I will go into some Jorge Polanco talk. So, shall we get into it? Let's go. To begin, let's just give one word to describe the 2024 Seattle Mariners. And for me, that one word is disappointing. You look at where this team was at to begin the year, where the expectations were, what you were thinking about. You looked at the roster and you saw the additions of Jorge Polanco. You saw the addition of Mitch Garver. You saw Gregory Santos. You saw Luke Raley. You saw these additions and you were excited. You saw Mitch Haniger as well. And you looked at this roster and you felt really good about this roster. You felt like this was a roster good enough to compete for not only a playoff spot, but for the division. And what did they do? They fought for both. But you felt heading into the season as if you were making the postseason. You felt like this team was good enough to do it in this league. In the American League, you felt like your team was good enough. It ended up being not. But through the middle of June, your team was well on their way to winning a division. 10 games ahead of the Houston Astros. And then it all went south. And this is where the disappointment really lies. You're playing a brand of baseball that is just brutal to watch. Strikeouts were obnoxious, for lack of a better term. You were tied for the worst strikeout percentage in the entire league. Just horrible. You were 25th in slugging, 29th in average out of 30 teams. The only team worse in terms of batting average was the Chicago White Sox, who hit 221. What did you hit? 224. In terms of slugging, you were 25th, like I said. But slugging isn't just home runs. In terms of home runs, you weren't a terrible team. You were 13th in home runs. That's about where you need to be. That's league average. But in terms of triples and doubles, you were 27th in doubles and 29th in triples. Now, where does that problem lie? Is that the players? Is that the ballpark? Is it the approach? Now, it's probably a mix of all three of the things, and I think the ballpark does play a role. You look at it, it suppresses doubles, it suppresses triples. Like, that is a known thing. It suppresses hits. But you also look at some of these Mariners teams of the past that have played in T-Mobile Park, and they have been able to hit a bunch of doubles and hit some triples. You shouldn't be 29th in triples. You shouldn't be 27th in doubles. And that brings down your slugging, and that's really, in my opinion, where it matters. So when I'm looking at this offseason, I want dudes that are going to get doubles, who are going to hit doubles, who are going to drive runners in, because these are problems that need to be fixed. And the most disappointing part of 2024 for me is when you look at the pitching staff. Pitching staff led the league in whip, walks plus hits per inning pitched, and they led the league in opponent average. Opponents hit 218 off of this pitching staff. Your whip was 1.08. You were giving up just about one base runner an inning. That is an unbelievable number for an entirety of a pitching staff over the entirety of a year. With that pitching staff, all you needed was your offense not to be 29th in average and 25th in slugging. You just needed to not be worst in terms of strikeout percentage. You walked better than you have in the past. You were the 4th highest in terms of walk percentage, and that's better. But it can't just be walks. You have to do other stuff. You can't be a one-trick pony. That's really what this 2024 Mariners team was. Now, as we look at positional values, it sucks because you see some really, really good spots in terms of F4. You look at catcher, you were third in the league at catcher. You were 11th at first, and here comes the biggest problem. Second base, you were 24th in F4. Third base, you were 5th, but most of that is due to defense. You were 14th in offensive F4 at third base. Shortstop, you were 10th. Left field, you were 12th. Center field, you were 3rd. Right field, you were 14th. And another huge problem is DH, where you were 22nd. So what does that tell you? There are two big spots you got to fill. Second base and DH. And as you headed into the season, you thought Mitch Garver and Jorge Polanco were going to fill those two spots and we're going to be great. And had they done that, this team is a playoff team. Had they been what they have been in the past, this team is 100% a playoff team. And who knows what they would have done in October. But that brings me into this offseason. And you look at this offseason, and what do you need? You need at least one really solid, solidified bat that you know what they're going to bring. But is one really enough? You at least need one, but really you need two. You need two plus a Justin Turner type of player who should be your first priority. Justin Turner should be the dude you're looking at, and you're like, yeah, let's sign him as soon as free agency opens. Let's get him signed up. Let's get him to play behind Luke Raley. Let's do a little platoon action there. And then let's figure out second and third. That's what you should be doing right now. And if you don't bring back Jorge Polanco, then you're going to need two bats. You're 100% going to need two bats because that means you need to fill second and DH for sure. If you bring back Polanco, you still need a little bit. You're probably going to need a decent third baseman, but you're going to need a really good DH. It's pretty simple. Now on Polanco, he had knee surgery a couple weeks ago. Is a club option for $12 million if they want to take it. This was an injury he apparently dealt with the entire year, which is really interesting because his stats, when you compare this year to past years, 2023, 2022, 2021, that is really interesting. I think the question you have to ask yourself is, can you fill what you want to get from Jorge Polanco for cheaper? Or can you get two players for cheaper that are going to give you output better or the same as what Jorge Polanco is going to bring you? And the other question is whether he will bounce back. You look at 21, 22, 23, and you look at his WRC pluses. In 2021, it was a 124. 2022, it was a 118. In 2023, it was a 117 WRC plus. That is a really good player, and that's why when you started the season, you were really excited about this guy. This was a guy that you thought was going to be the solution to your second base curse since Robinson Cano left. I wrote an article about it for my school's sports journalism club. You can go find that if you want to go find that. And then you look at this year for Jorge Polanco. WRC plus of 92. Just truly and utterly an abysmal, disappointing season for Jorge Polanco. Now, on that, is that because of the injury or is he derailing? He's 31 years old. You look at this year, he still had a good walk percentage. He still had good chase percentage. But the problem was his barrel percentage. You look at those 3 years that I was talking about earlier, 10.1, 10.2, 13.8, and it dropped off a cliff from 13.8 to 8.9% barrels. Launch angle was also down 4 degrees, so what is that telling you? The quality of contact for Jorge Polanco was way down this year. Way down. And part of that is because he couldn't hit the fastball. If you want to look at the fastball, he had a run value of 6 against the fastball in 2021. He had a run value of 4 in 2022, 7 in 2023, and this year he dropped into the negatives to a run value of -5. He went from being a good fastball hitter to being a bad fastball hitter. He wasn't even mediocre. He wasn't average. He was straight up bad. Now, in terms of his age, that could be a reason why his fastball, he can't hit it as well. Maybe he's slowing down. But if you want to talk about that, his sprint speed and home plate to first speed, they weren't down anything significantly. It was about the same as it's been. So maybe he is aging. Maybe that's why his bat is slowing down. Or maybe it is because of that knee injury, and maybe he has a bounce back year. In my opinion, I still think that he really could have a bounce back year. He had a walk percentage of 9.8 this year, struck out more than he has at any point in his career, 29% of the time. You have to think that's going to go down. And he just had a bad year. He had an OPS in the 600s. And he was worth a third of a win. Again, that's the worst at any point in his career for when he's played more than 4 games. This is a guy that's been established as a hitter, as a second baseman when he was with Minnesota, and making that change is a big change, and maybe that's another reason why he struggled this year. Maybe it was because of this change of scenery that he hadn't experienced in his career yet. Maybe it was because he was dealing with an injury, and maybe the combination of both those things plus a just completely new organization made it really difficult for him to succeed. And if you believe that, then maybe it's worth picking up that $12 million option. And maybe it's worth bringing him back and filling that second base hole until Cole Young's there. And then you have him to fill in with JP and with Polanco. Then you go fill the third base hole. You go fill the DH hole. You go fill the first base hole, however you want to do that. There are ways to do it. And it gets a lot easier if you believe Jorge Polanco is the guy he's been in his career, and last year is an outlier. And when you look at his career, that's what it seems like. Now, do I think he will be back? Would I bet on him being back? No. And part of that's because his defense also was very poor. In terms of outs above average, you look at the year 2021, -5 at second base. In terms of 2022, -9, 23, -7, and he drops with Perry Hill to -10. You expected that to improve a little bit, but it did not. It got worse. And that in of itself is a bad sign, because with Perry Hill, a lot of players, their defense gets better. They improve. With Jorge Polanco, that just was not. It was not true. It didn't happen. And maybe that's a reason the Mariners do not want to continue with him. Maybe they want to go find someone that can shore up some defense at second base so that then you have a Josh Rojas type of situation where even if you can't hit, you're getting value out of it. Because Josh Rojas this year, while he hit in April, was abysmal for the rest of this year at the plate. But while he was doing that, he was playing a Gold Glove level at third base. He was one of the better defenders at third base the entire season. And Jorge Polanco wasn't. He brought you 0 value. The only value he brought you were strikeouts. And as a pitcher, that's good. As a hitter, that's not good. So he didn't bring you actually anything. He was just straight up a bad baseball player this year. And it's a similar thing with Mitch Garver. And I think the question is, how would it be possible to have both of these dudes? And I don't know if it is. And I think that's, in the end, why Jorge Polanco probably will not return to the Seattle Mariners in 2025. But if he does, and they believe in him, I trust that. And I understand why they would want to do that. Now, the other question I would ask is, can you get him for cheaper than $12 million? Can you decline that club option for $12 million or sort of spread that out? Can you pay him a little bit less than that? Can you pay him $6, $8, $10 million this year instead of that $12 million and pay him a little bit outside of that? So that you then have your payroll a little bit lower and you can go get someone else as well. But if you want to talk about someone that you could go get for cheaper than Jorge Polanco and will probably bring you similar or better value, that's when I look at Brendan Donovan, estimated for $4 million this year. Even Alec Boehm, who's estimated for $8 million this year. Both are in their arbs, and both will have more club control, and both are younger. Now, both are trade candidates, so you have to then go spend capital to get them. But both were 115 WRC plus bats this year. You go add those two dudes to this lineup, and you're feeling great. You go add those two dudes plus Justin Turner, you feel really good going into this year. And then if you can even go get a DH type of bat, then you feel even better. For example, let's say you go sign Justin Turner, you go get Brendan Donovan, you go get Alec Boehm, and then you figure out a way to go get Ian Happ as well. Ian Happ is platoon heavy, but you could go do that type of thing with Mitch Garver. Ian Happ is way better from the left-handed side with a 128 WRC plus from the left-handed side this year. You go combine that with Garver, who has been better hitting off of lefties as a right-handed hitter. That's a platoon at DH. And then you go at second base, Brendan Donovan. And then third base, Alec Boehm. And you can get Donovan and Boehm for, if their contracts estimations are about right, that's the same amount of money as Jorge Polanco's making. So if you just straight up want to think about it like that, then this does not make any sense. It doesn't make sense to go and not decline this option. I think this option has to be declined, and I think that's going to end up being what happens. Even a Brandon Lau, who's 30 years old, has a $10.5 million club option this year, and it jumps to 11.5 in 2026. Even that might make more sense. So as you can see from the way I'm thinking about this as the type of thing of that $12 million that Jorge Polanco is worth. And you're going to hear this a lot from me over this offseason because money's going to matter this offseason. We know they're increasing it a little bit. We don't know how much in terms of payroll, but it's going to matter just as it did last year. And $12 million for a dude who you don't know what you're going to get from him with this Mariners team, that's probably not worth it, especially when you can go fill it with two other guys that are going to make less than that and combine to around that. So that's where I would be thinking. And that's why, in the end, Jorge Polanco, to me, does not make sense. So in conclusion, again, the season was a failure. It was absolutely a failure. It was disappointing, and the one word I would use to describe it is disappointing. We'll go into next year with the same level of excitement. Now, how should expectations change? Because this team now hasn't been to the postseason 2 years in a row. It's been since 2022 that this team's been in the postseason. It's a similar core, but you're not seeing the same type of stuff. So, when I'm looking at 2025, I'm thinking my expectations need to change. I'm not expecting this team to go for a postseason unless they make some big moves. I'm expecting this team to compete for a postseason spot. And if stuff goes right, then yeah, you make the postseason. But if it doesn't go right, you're not in the postseason for the third year in a row. And unfortunately, that's not how it should be. This team should go spend some money, go make yourself a team that is going to go into the postseason, even if you have a couple things that don't go right. But thank you guys for listening. Again, Jorge Polanco will probably have that club option declined. And as I just laid out the points of why I would probably do the same thing, you can see it's probably the right decision in the end. And we will go into 2025 with some sort of expectation, depending on what they do this offseason. But again, offseason is one of my favorite times of the year. It's exciting. It's a chance to really just build yourself some excitement and expectation for the next year that you're going to be a postseason team, that maybe you can compete for a World Series. You can go profile dudes that aren't on your team. And that's something for me that I found a lot of joy in. So we'll be back soon. But for now, go Mariners, and peace.